This deer is already dead, it just doesn't know it.
Deer that have this disease right here are known as zombie deer, and this is because even though they're alive now, they won't be for very much longer. This clip right here shows a deer that looks relatively normal, but it's behaving very erratically. It's repeatedly running around in circles, it's very disoriented, and not afraid of the human recording it at all. This is all in part due to an absolutely terrifying disease known as CWD, or chronic wasting disease. Now this disease right here is caused by misshapen prions. These are not bacteria or viruses, they don't even have DNA in them. CWD has been spreading more and more in the wild from deer to deer because it's very easy and prions live for a very long time. It's also relatively easy to spot a deer that has CWD because they usually look pretty malnourished and very disoriented without having any fear of people. With that being said, even though CWD hasn't been shown to directly be transmitted to humans, it is highly recommended that you do not consume meat that's infected with CWD. So if you see a deer doing this, you should probably call your local wildlife agency and report it. Most of you guys watching this video right now probably do not know just how deadly this is. This video posted to TikTok shows two divers exploring a reef underwater. Everything seems to be going fine until a very loud high-pitched sonar ping ends up making contact with them. This stops the divers dead in their tracks, and they're pretty lucky to be alive here. For those that are unaware as to what a sonar ping is, this is something that's typically used for military watercraft. What they'll do is they'll shoot out an extremely loud 240 decibel sonar, which is meant to send sound waves out, and when they bounce back, they get a reading of what their surroundings are. Obviously, the closer you are to one of these sonar pings, the worse it's going to be for you. If you're too up close and personal and get blasted with a sonar ping, this can straight up melt your brain, give you a brain hemorrhage, and take your life. Even at this distance where these divers got hit with a sonar ping, they probably experienced this throughout their entire body and suffered a great degree. Now, unfortunately, it's pretty hard to predict whether or not there's going to be a sonar ping if you're scuba diving, so this is really just bad luck.
This raccoon is already dead.
Money! I'd recommend not touching that raccoon. In this video, we can see a raccoon fearlessly walk up to this person in a parking garage. The person then offers the raccoon a piece of a chip, and the raccoon makes this face before standing up and then falling over. Now, this reaction right here is definitely not a typical reaction of a raccoon, so something's wrong. Many people in the comments of this video were claiming that this raccoon most likely has rabies. And while I will agree a lot of these symptoms exhibited here do look like rabies, this is most likely something called distemper. Canine distemper virus, or CDV, is something that is also extremely deadly, however, not quite as deadly as rabies. These symptoms are characterized by lack of fear, walking in circles, seizures, and making this face right here. CDV cannot be passed on to humans. However, if your dog isn't vaccinated, you can actually spread it to your dogs from wildlife. And unlike rabies, where you have to be bit for the virus to be transmitted, CDV is like a standard cold where you can transmit it through the air or surfaces. If you ever see a wild animal exhibiting weird symptoms like this, best to get away and call animal control.
This man is already dead, he just doesn't know it.
For those of you that are familiar with this symptom right here, you'll know that this guy has almost zero chance of survival. What we're looking at in this video is a case of hydrophobia, where this guy is about to drink water, but he's unable to do so because he's afraid of the water. He raises it to his mouth, unable to take a drink, and then sets the water down and laughs, but pretty sure that this is just a nervous laugh. Hydrophobia is an indicator for a much worse disease known as rabies that has almost a 100% mortality rate. One of the major symptoms is the inability to drink water because your throat muscles contract every time liquid meets your lips. So I want you to just imagine that you're dying of thirst and you try to take a drink, but you're unable to do so. There are quite a few animals that can pass rabies to humans. If they're infected, these would be foxes, bats, raccoons, or skunks. So if you get bit by an animal, it's always best to be safe and go get a rabies vaccine. If you don't get a rabies vaccine, the first 30 to 60 days, you won't really feel anything. But eventually you'll get the prodrome phase where you'll start feeling tingling at the site of the bite, acute neurologic period where you start having seizures. Eventually this could progress into a coma, and after that you will die. Judging by this guy's reaction, he's probably in stage 2 or 3, which means he doesn't have much longer.
If you see this in the water, you're already dead.
I could definitely understand why someone would believe this, but this is not true. A few of you guys tagged me in this video here where this guy can be seen paddleboarding when he spots a shadow in the water below him. When he turns around and focuses the camera, he sees a very large orca, otherwise known as a killer whale. Now the name killer whale suggests that they're very mean creatures that you don't want to be around. And it probably stems from the fact that they're absolutely brutal hunters. In this photo, for example, this right up here is a seal that this orca tail slapped 80 feet into the air. But when it comes to humans, especially in the wild, orcas have very rarely ever attacked, and there hasn't even been a documented death caused by an orca. The only time that an orca has ever been reported to take the lives of people is when they're in captivity, and specifically we're talking about Tilikum. Tilikum took the lives of 3 different trainers, most famous probably being this trainer right here, Don Brancheau. But if there's anything this tells us is that orcas shouldn't be in captivity. If you run into an orca in the wild, just stay calm, it's most likely just curious and trying to figure out what you are.
This tree is already dead, it just doesn't know it.
I'd be willing to bet that many of the people watching this video did not know that trees can burn from the inside out. In this video, these people found a tree that looked perfectly fine from the outside until they looked inside and they saw that it was on fire. This is a pretty rare phenomenon in nature, but it does happen from time to time, and there's a very logical explanation behind it. There are a couple things that can cause a tree to catch fire from the inside out. Number 1 is a forest fire, number 2 is a lightning strike, or number 3, man-made. First, we need to understand why it's possible for trees to burn from the inside out. From this diagram, you guys can see that the very inside of the tree contains heartwood. Heartwood is completely dry and very flammable, and then we have sapwood on the outside, which is very wet. Trees can contain openings on the inside, and when fire somehow finds a way to get past the bark and burn the heartwood, this is where we see a tree catch fire from the inside out. The thing about removing these hollow trees as well is that these can be quite dangerous because they're very unpredictable in the way that they fall. If you guys are familiar with this video right here, you'll know that this lumberjack almost gets crushed by a piece of this tree because it splits vertically. So in this case, I would say to leave this tree alone and observe from a distance because it's pretty fascinating.
This spider is already dead, it just doesn't know it.
If you are anything like me, you were absolutely not a fan of that video when you first watched it. The clip you guys just watched shows a spider struggling to walk up the side of this wall during the final stages of an extremely fatal fungal infection for invertebrates. What's creepy about this is that you can recognize that it's a spider, but you really can't tell the type because it's covered in this white coating here. Now this is the result of an extremely well-known parasitic fungus known as cordyceps. Spiders that live in more moist environments, like cellar spiders, are typically going to be the ones that are more susceptible to getting this fungus. And once the beginning stages of the cordyceps fungus show up, which is these little puffs right here on the hinges of the spider's leg, that pretty much is a death sentence. What happens is the cordyceps fungus will start growing on top of the spider, feeding off of its bodily fluids, and eventually when the spider dies, the cordyceps fungus will release spores, which will then in turn infect more spiders, and the cycle continues. Now this spider is undoubtedly dead, but fortunately the cordyceps fungus cannot be spread to humans. This will just continue to infect other spiders or ants.
This goat is already dead, it just doesn't know it.
Sorry guys, but if you like goats, this is going to ruin your day. This farmer right here found a newborn goat that has a very strange deformity. As you can see, this goat's eyes are extremely close together, and this is a phenomenon known as cyclopia. Cyclopia is a nod to the mythical creature, the Cyclops, the creature that has only one eye. Cyclopia can also vary on degrees of severity. Very severe cyclopia is going to see a complete single eye, whereas lesser degrees are going to look more like this, 2 separate eyes but very close. And believe it or not, this is also a mutation that can impact human babies as well. Now, I'm not going to show any actual human babies with this mutation, but be warned, if you look it up, it's very haunting. And for human babies, it's just as fatal, if not more. The oldest person that had this deformity right here only lived 1 day. It's believed that cyclopia is caused by extremely severe brain trauma that happens while the mother is pregnant with the baby. Regardless, this is a very heartbreaking condition because you know, once you see this, that the baby is not going to survive.
This cow is already dead, it just doesn't know it.
Yeah, you guys heard that right. This cow is going to die and there's absolutely no cure. This clip shows a very confused and disoriented looking cow sitting inside of an enclosure. This cow is exhibiting behavior that is not normal. It's actually charging the camera person and they're not even inside of this pen. The cow then stops and starts moving its head in a very erratic manner, and this is because this cow has mad cow's disease. Mad cow's disease is essentially a brain-eating prions disease which has no cure. It leaves victims feeling very disoriented, confused, loss of balance, loss of motor function, until they inevitably lose themselves completely and die. Now, the terrifying part about this is that humans that eat meat that are infected with these prions will also end up contracting a form of this known as CJD. What's even more terrifying is that the prions that cause this disease cannot be destroyed using standard methods. Typically, humans that contract CJD will end up passing away within around a year, and by the end of this, their brain is going to look like this, very spongy with a bunch of little holes in it. Now, before you stop buying your burgers and steaks, you have to realize this disease is very rare. There's an extremely low chance that you'll get it, but it is something to be aware of.
This man is already dead, he just doesn't know it.
Huh?
If this video right here is real, that is very bad news for the person filming. This is a video that I found on Reddit where this guy is claiming that somebody sent him this metal object right here. It looks relatively normal until this guy opens it up. Once he opens it up and starts recording over the opening, the camera starts to get very fuzzy. And for those that don't know, this is not a good sign. This means that there's likely radiation present. The entire duration of this 30-second video, this guy's playing around with this, opening it up and closing it up. So, what's going on here? Well, first and foremost, this guy got his hands on something known as a radiation flask. This is what they store radioactive objects in that are dangerous to prevent the radiation from escaping. One thing that's commonly been documented when cameras are around radioactive objects is something called noise. These are all these tiny little white dots here because the radioactive particles are making contact and damaging film. This also impacts digital cameras on the CMOS sensor. So is this guy fine? If this is actual radiation here, probably not, but fortunately I found quite a few sources saying that this video is edited, so this guy should be fine.